Hello! Yes! Welcome to our Objective 4.6 notes. Objective 4.6 is I can simplify operations with imaginary numbers, and that, my friends, is going to be what we do today. So imaginary numbers are what occur when we attempt to take the square root of a negative number. Now the basis of all this, of all imaginary numbers, is the idea that I squared equals negative 1. So that's to say, if I have the square root of negative 1, that would equal I. All right, so if I square both sides, I would get negative 1 is equal to I squared. Okay, so let's start today by just kind of working with some imaginary numbers, kind of simplifying some square roots here. So if I look at letter A, the square root of negative 175, what I can think to myself here is, okay, so this is, let's say, negative 1 times, let's see, this would be 25 times 7, right? Take the square root of all of these things. So the square root of negative 1 is I, square root of 25 is 5, square root of 7, we'd have to just keep right that. And then we would write our final solution as 5i root 7. So the imaginary number goes between the coefficient and the radical, 5i root 7. So looking at B, the square root of negative 12, we can say this is the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. That'd be I times 2 times the square root of 3. So we'd have 2i root 3 here. And C, here's a cool one, the square root of negative 32 plus the square root of negative 18. So think about what we have here. Negative 32, I'd have I'd have square root of 16, square root of 2, plus I'd have I times the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. So this would become 4i root 2 plus 3i root 2. And in this case, we can't actually combine these things because we have the same radical here. So this would become 7i root 2. Now, these are just strictly looking at imaginary numbers. One thing that involves imaginary numbers is complex numbers. Complex numbers are numbers that have a real part and an imaginary part. And they're written as a plus bi, where a is the real part and bi is the imaginary portion. So when you have operations with complex numbers, they follow the same rules as real numbers, and we treat I like a variable. The one thing we have to remember is that I squared equals negative 1. So whenever I get I squared while simplifying, we need to turn it into negative 1. Let me show you what I'm talking about as we do some examples here. So if we're adding or subtracting complex numbers, simple. Add our reals, add our imaginary. So I'd say negative 2 plus 1. That would give me negative 1. 6i minus 2i, right? Plus a negative. So 6i minus 2i, that would become plus 4i. That would be my solution for this one. When I'm subtracting, again, just reals with reals, imaginaries with imaginaries. So 6 minus 8 is negative 2. Negative 8i minus 8i would be negative 16i. And I can leave it like that. There's no need, even though there's a GCF here, we could take a 2 out. No need to do that when we're doing this. It's not necessary. Multiplying, if we have two binomials, we can distribute. So I'd say negative 6 times 6 is negative 36. That's this one here. Negative 6 times negative 7i would become positive 42i. Negative I times 6 would become negative 6i. Negative I times negative 7i would become positive 7i squared. So think about this here. Remember, I squared equals negative 1. So when I combine this, I'll have negative 36 plus 42i minus 6i would be 36i. Plus 7 times negative 1. So this will become negative 36 plus 36i minus 7. Negative 36 minus 7, well, that give me negative 43. Negative 43 plus 36i. And there we go. That would be our solution to this operation. Let's try another like this. So if I'm multiplying two binomials, negative 5 times 6 would be negative 30. Negative 5 times negative I would become positive 5i. Negative 3i times 6 would be negative 18i. Negative 3i times negative I would be positive 3i squared. Now, of course, I squared is negative 1, so I'd have negative 30 minus 5i minus 18i is negative 13i, plus 3 times negative 1. So negative 30 minus 13i minus 3. Combine my real terms, negative 30, negative 3, so that'd give me negative 33 minus 13i. There we go. These last two are kind of combinations of some operations. So we follow the same order of operations. We just treat I like a variable. Anytime we get I squared, it becomes negative 1. So let's break this down a little bit. Negative 1, so we have multiplication here, we have multiplication here, and then we're adding the two things we find. Okay, so we got to do our multiplication before our addition. So negative 1 times negative 8 would be positive 8. Negative 1 times 6i would be negative 6i. 3i times negative 8 would be negative 24i. 3i times 6i would be positive 18i squared. And I'm going to simplify this one all the way down first. So let's do, we'd have 8 minus 30i plus 18 times negative 1. So that'd become minus 18. So we'll have 8 minus 18 minus 30i. So we'll have negative 10 minus 30i from our first multiplication. Now, we're going to add that to whatever we get from this second multiplication. So let's do it. Negative 2 times negative 8 is 16. Negative 2 times negative 2i is positive 4i. 6i times negative 8 is negative 48i. 6i times negative 2i will be negative 12i squared. So we'd have 16... 4 minus 48, that'd be negative 44i, and then negative 12 times negative 1. So this will become plus 12. So we'll have 16 plus 12 minus 44i. 16 plus 12 is 28 minus 44i. So now we add my reals. So negative 10 plus 28 would give me 18. My imaginaries, negative 30i plus negative 40i would give me negative 74i. And that would be our solution. All right, last thing we have going on here. So anytime we look at something being squared, a binomial being squared, remember we need to write that as two binomials being multiplied so that we catch all the terms that go in there. Over here, we just have some addition and subtraction going on. So 3 plus negative 1 is 2. And then negative I minus 3i, that will become negative 4i. So we kind of simplified that already. So let's do some multiplying here. So 3 times 3 is 9. 3 plus 4i would be 12i. We'll have that twice. And then 4i times 4i would be 16i squared plus 2 minus 4i. So we'll have 9 plus 2 is 11. 12i plus 12i is 24i. Now we will subtract 4i, and we still have plus 16 times I squared, remember, is negative 1. So we'll have 11 plus 20i minus 16. 11 minus 16 is negative 5 plus 20i, and that would be our simplified form here. All right, hopefully we're feeling pretty good about operations with complex numbers. If you want to see some more samples, definitely check out that sample problem. Otherwise, definitely get started on your practice problem. See how you do. Remember to check your work with your answer key. Make sure we're doing everything right. This is Mr. Carter signing off. I'll see you next time.